The alien marketplace was loud, full of shouting voices, strange smells, and the sound of chains. Bright lamps burned overhead, showing cages filled with weak and tired beings. Some were young, some were old, but all of them wore the same expression: fear mixed with hopelessness. They had been sold many times, treated like objects, and tonight was just another cruel business for the slavers. At the center stage, one girl stood out. She was small, maybe 12 or 13 in human years, her thin frame shaking as she tried to hide her face behind her tangled hair. Her eyes, a pale silver that glowed softly under the light, looked down at the floor. The auctioneer, a tall reptilian alien with sharp teeth, pulled her forward by the chain around her neck. "Look at this one," he shouted to the crowd. "Rare bloodline, strong energy core. She will fetch a high price." The crowd of aliens roared with excitement. Some lifted credit chips in the air, ready to bid. Others laughed cruelly, talking about how much work she could do or how much pain she could endure. The little girl bit her lip, but a single tear ran down her cheek. She had already accepted her fate. No one ever came to save them. No one ever fought the slavers. But then, the crowd suddenly grew silent. From the shadows of the marketplace, a tall figure stepped forward. His footsteps were heavy, and his presence made the aliens whisper to each other. He was not like them. He was a human. Humans were rare in this sector of the galaxy. Most kept away from the slave markets, pretending not to see the cruelty. But this human's eyes burned with a fire no one could ignore. His uniform was torn, his boots dusty, but he carried himself with the strength of a soldier who had seen many battles. The auctioneer narrowed his eyes. "What business does a human have here?" he hissed. The human ignored him. His gaze was fixed on the trembling girl on stage. For a moment their eyes met, her silver glow reflecting against his steady brown stare. She felt something strange, not pity, not disgust, but protection. The human took another step closer. His voice was calm, but it carried across the entire market. "She will not be sold." The crowd gasped. Some laughed, others muttered angrily. The auctioneer's face twisted into a cruel smile. "And who will stop her sale? You?" He tugged the chain hard, making the girl stumble forward. "You cannot afford her, human. This one is worth thousands of credits." The human shook his head slowly. His jaw tightened as he spoke again. "She is not property. She is free." The words felt heavy in the air, almost impossible in a place built on slavery. The crowd erupted in noise, jeers, laughter, anger. Some shouted, "Mad human! Kill him!" Others simply wanted the show to continue. The auctioneer bared his sharp teeth. "Do you know what you are saying? To free one slave is to challenge the law of this city. You will not leave here alive." The human stepped forward again, now only a few feet from the stage. His hand rested on the old weapon strapped across his back. The weapon was simple, nothing like the advanced blasters the aliens carried, but the way he held himself made it clear. He was not afraid. For the first time, the little girl lifted her head. She looked at him with wide eyes, her heart beating fast. Could it be true? Could someone really see her as more than a slave? The human looked at her and gave a small nod, as if promising her silently, "You are safe now." The crowd's noise grew louder, guards moving in closer. The auctioneer's voice boomed across the market. "Take him. Show this human what happens to fools who defy us." Several armored slaver guards rushed forward, weapons in hand. The girl gasped and stepped back, but the human didn't move away. Instead, he stood tall, waiting for them. The moment before the fight, the market held its breath. No one had ever dared to oppose the slavers. No one had ever spoken such words in public. To call a slave free was to spit in the face of the galaxy's cruelest law. And yet here was one human standing alone, his eyes burning with defiance. The little girl felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. The moment was tense. The alien guards surrounded the human, their weapons raised high, glowing with lethal energy. The crowd pressed closer, some cheering for blood, others whispering in disbelief. Never before had anyone tried to stop a slave auction. This was madness. The little alien girl froze, her thin arms trembling as the chain around her neck rattled. Her eyes locked onto the human, and for the first time she dared to hope. But hope was dangerous here. Slaves who hoped too much often suffered the worst punishments. The lead guard, a hulking beast with thick armor and 4 glowing eyes, growled deep in his throat. "Step back, human. This is not your world. This is not your fight." But the human didn't move. His voice was calm, firm, and strangely powerful. cutting through the noise like a blade. It became my fight the moment I saw her chained. The crowd roared with laughter, mocking him. Foolish human. Weak creature. He thinks he is a hero. They laughed and spat, but their voices trembled slightly. There was something unsettling about the way he stood, unshaken, unafraid. The auctioneer slammed his claw against the podium. You insult our laws. You insult our trade. Do you want death, human? The human looked around at the hundreds of faces staring at him. Some were entertained, others furious. But what caught his eye were not the slavers. It was the other cages. Inside them, dozens of slaves had stopped breathing for a moment, their eyes wide with disbelief. They had heard his words, "She is free," and those words lit a spark. The human could see it. The spark of hope. He stepped forward. One guard lunged at him, swinging a heavy staff. The human moved quickly, sidestepping, and with one solid punch he sent the guard crashing to the ground. The crowd gasped, shocked at his strength. Another guard charged, but the human grabbed his arm, twisted it, and sent him flying into the auction stage. The little girl stumbled back, stunned. She had never seen anyone fight for her before. She had never seen anyone fight against the slavers. Her heart raced. The other guards hesitated now, circling him, unsure if they should attack all at once. The human reached for his weapon, a simple steel blade strapped to his back. Unlike the advanced blasters and energy rifles of the aliens, this blade was old, worn, but in his hands it felt alive. The auctioneer's face turned red with rage. Kill him! Tear him apart! The guards rushed together this time. The human fought fiercely, his movements sharp, his strikes precise. Each time he moved, it was clear. He was not just some wanderer. He was a soldier. He had fought in real wars against stronger enemies and survived. The crowd's laughter faded. Now there was silence, broken only by the clash of weapons and the heavy thud of bodies hitting the ground. Finally, the last guard fell, groaning, unable to rise. The human stood tall, his chest rising and falling with steady breaths. Around him lay the defeated guards. The auctioneer stared in disbelief. The human pointed his blade at him. His voice was steady. Release her, the auctioneer spat in anger. You will regret this, human. Do you know what you've done? The Slaver Guild will hunt you. They will burn you alive for this insult. The human lowered his weapon slowly, but his gaze stayed fixed on the girl. His words were simple, I don't care. The girl's chains rattled as the auctioneer, cursing, unlocked them with shaking claws. The sound of the lock breaking was like thunder in her heart. Her wrists were free for the first time in years. She touched them, almost not believing it was real. The human bent down slightly and looked at her. You're safe now. No one owns you. Her lips trembled. She had no words, only tears rolling down her cheeks. She whispered softly, Why? Why would you do this? The human's face was calm, but there was a sadness in his eyes. Because no child should live in chains. The crowd erupted again, some angry, others whispering. But in the cages around the market, hundreds of eyes shone with new light. They had heard him. They had seen it happen. One of them was free. The human took the girl's small hand in his, guiding her away from the stage. The crowd parted, uncertain. Some wanted to stop him, but the image of the fallen guards held them back. The auctioneer shouted after him, Run, human. Run as far as you can. The guild will never forgive this. You have started something you cannot stop. The human didn't answer. He just kept walking, holding the girl's hand tightly. And deep in the shadows of the marketplace, whispers spread like fire. Slaves turned to each other, whispering the impossible words they had just heard. A human saved one of us. The marketplace was no longer filled with laughter. It was chaos now. The fallen guards groaned on the ground, and the auctioneer screamed orders. But no one dared step in front of the human. The slaves inside their cages pressed close to the bars, their eyes following him as if he were carrying all of their hopes. The human tightened his grip on the girl's small hand. Stay close, he whispered. She nodded, her silver eyes wide with fear, but she didn't let go. For years she had been pushed, chained and dragged, but now for the first time, someone held her hand to guide her, not to control her. The crowd slowly parted as the human walked forward, but the tension was thick. He could feel the anger in the air. It was only a matter of seconds before more guards would arrive, and then it happened. A loud alarm echoed through the market. Red lights flashed from tall towers and a mechanical voice announced in several alien languages. Security alert. Slave stolen. Capture the human. The girl gasped, but the human didn't stop moving. He pulled her into a side alley just as armored patrols stormed into the market. Energy blasts struck the walls, throwing sparks into the air. Run! The human ordered. The girl's legs were weak, but the adrenaline pushed her forward. They raced through narrow alleys lined with broken stalls and glowing signs. Behind them, shouts grew louder as the slavers chased. Don't let them escape! Blaster fire cut through the air. The human pushed the girl behind a wall just in time as a bolt of blue energy scorched past them. He pulled out his blade again, his eyes sharp. The girl clutched his arm. They will catch us, she whispered, trembling. The human crouched low, scanning the path ahead. His voice was steady, almost calm, even as danger closed in. Not if we move smart. Trust me. She swallowed hard and nodded. Somehow, when he spoke, she believed him. They darted into another alley, this one darker and more dangerous. The ground was slick with strange liquids, and the air smelled of metal and smoke. Strange creatures hissed at them from the shadows, but none dared attack when they saw the human's blade. The sounds of pursuit echoed closer. Heavy boots clashed against metal streets. The human pushed the girl toward a staircase. Up! They climbed quickly, reaching the rooftops of the alien city. From here, the view was overwhelming. Tall spires stretched into the night sky, glowing with neon lights. Ships roared overhead, their engines leaving trails of fire in the clouds. The girl stopped for a moment, breathing hard, staring at the endless city. There is no place to hide, she whispered. The human crouched beside her, scanning the rooftops. His jaw tightened. Every city has shadows. We'll find them. Blaster fire struck the rooftop behind them. Sparks flew as metal shattered. The girl screamed, but the human lifted her in his arms and leapt across to the next building. The distance was wide, but his strength carried them safely. The slavers shouted from behind. Catch them! A reward for anyone who brings the human alive. More voices rose from the streets below. Bounty hunters, thieves, mercenaries. Word had already spread and the entire underworld of the city now wanted them. The human set the girl down, breathing heavily but never slowing. He pulled a small device from his belt, pressing a button. A faint signal beeped. If we can reach the docks, there might be a chance, he muttered. The girl looked up at him. Why risk everything for me? He paused just for a second before answering. Because you deserve to live free. Because you remind me of someone I lost. Her chest tightened, but before she could ask more, the rooftop ahead lit up with bright red beams. Another squad of slaver guards had cut them off. The human stepped in front of the girl, blade raised. The guards laughed. You can't fight all of us, human. Hand her over. He smirked slightly, eyes burning with defiance. You're right. I can't fight all of you. He suddenly threw a small flash device at their feet. A blinding light burst across the rooftop, followed by smoke. The guards screamed, blinded, firing their weapons wildly. Now! The human shouted, grabbing the girl's hand. They slipped past the chaos, racing down a hidden stairwell that led deep into the underbelly of the city. Dark tunnels stretched before them, the hum of machinery echoing in the walls. It was quieter here, but the danger hadn't passed. The slavers would never stop searching. The girl stumbled out of breath, but the human steadied her. Just a little further, he said, her voice cracked. Will they ever stop chasing us? The human's expression hardened. No, not after tonight, but we'll stay ahead of them. I promise. And though fear still gripped her heart, she believed him. Above them, the alarms still screamed. Across the city, whispers spread of a human who had stolen a slave from the market. To some, it was madness. To others, it was hope. And in the darkness of the tunnels, the human and the girl disappeared into the shadows, hunted, but not broken. The tunnels were endless, twisting like the veins of the city. Pipes dripped with cold water, steam hissed from broken valves, and the smell of rust filled the air. The human walked quickly, his hand still gripping the girl's tightly, guiding her through the maze. Her legs trembled with exhaustion, but she did not complain. Fear pushed her forward. Each sound behind them, distant footsteps, echoes, or even the drip of water, felt like a threat. Yet whenever she looked at the human's back, his tall figure gave her courage. Finally, he stopped in front of an old metal door. It looked abandoned, covered in dust and strange alien symbols. The girl tilted her head. Here? She whispered, uncertain. The human pressed his hand against a hidden panel. With a soft beep, the lock released and the door slid open with a groan. Inside was darkness, but it felt different. Calm, secret, safe. "This is my place," he said quietly. "No one knows it exists." They stepped inside. The door closed behind them, shutting out the noise of the city. Dim lights flickered on, revealing a small but organized space. There were old crates stacked in the corner, a table covered with maps and tools, and a cot pushed against the wall. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. The girl looked around slowly, her silver eyes wide. For the first time in years, she was not in a cage. The air felt strange without the rattle of chains around her wrists. She hugged herself, shivering. The human knelt beside a box and pulled out a blanket. He draped it over her shoulders gently. "You're safe here," he said. "No one can reach you," her lips trembled. "Safe." The word felt heavy on her tongue, almost unreal. She stared at him. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." He was silent for a moment, then sat down on the edge of the cot. His gaze was distant, like he was remembering something painful. "Because once, someone I cared about needed saving. I wasn't there in time. I swore it would never happen again." The girl lowered her head, clutching the blanket tighter. She didn't know what to say, but inside her heart beat with something new, a warmth that pushed against the cold fear. The human stood and began tending to her wounds. Her wrists were bruised from the chains, her feet raw from years of walking without rest. He cleaned the cuts carefully, wrapping them in clean bandages. His touch was gentle, nothing like the rough hands of the slavers. She flinched at first, but then slowly relaxed. "No one has ever been kind like this," she whispered. He gave her a small smile, though sadness lingered in his eyes. "You're not property. You're a person. Don't forget that." For a moment, silence filled the room. The girl studied his face, the lines of weariness, the scars that told of battles fought long ago. To others, he might look like just another soldier, but to her, he was something more. "Who are you?" she asked softly. He hesitated. "Just a human who can't walk away anymore." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Then, maybe you're more than that." Before he could answer, a sharp beep came from a device on the table. The human walked over and checked it. His expression darkened. "The slavers are searching every sector. They've already put a bounty on us. Half the city will be hunting." The girl's small body tensed. Then I've put you in danger." He shook his head firmly. "No, they were always going to come for me. Saving you just gave them a reason, but I don't regret it." His words struck her heart like fire. For years she had been told she was worthless, a burden, something to be used and discarded. But this human said the opposite. He had risked everything, and he didn't regret it. Her eyes watered, but this time not from fear. She wiped the tears quickly, almost embarrassed. "Thank you," she whispered. The human turned back toward her. "Rest now. Tomorrow will be harder." She nodded and curled up on the cot, the blanket wrapped around her. For the first time in a long time, she closed her eyes without chains binding her, without the fear of being sold. Sleep came slowly, but it came with peace. The human sat nearby, blade resting across his knees, watching the door. He knew the slavers would not give up. They would come again, stronger, angrier. Tonight was just the beginning. Yet as he watched the girl sleep, her breathing steady, her small hands clutching the blanket, something changed inside him. He had saved one life. That should have been enough. But he could not ignore the other cages he had seen, the other eyes that had looked at him with desperate hope. He whispered to himself, almost like a vow, "This fight is bigger than one child." And somewhere deep inside, he knew his life would never be the same again. The city did not sleep that night. Neon lights still glowed over the towers, ships still roared above the skies. But in the dark corners where the enslaved lived, something unusual stirred, a rumor. It began in the cages of the auction house. A guard, still bleeding from the human's blows, had whispered angrily to another. "The human took her." He called her free. He walked away alive. Slaves pressed close to their bars, listening. Their hearts skipped. A human? No one defied the guild. No one lived after stealing a slave. Yet here was proof. They had seen him with their own eyes, carrying the girl through the market like a father shielding his child. By the next hour, the rumor had traveled to the labor pits where exhausted workers dug through alien stone. In hushed voices, they passed it along. One girl was taken. The human fought the guards. They say he cut chains with his own hands. Tired faces lifted for the first time in years. Whispers spread like sparks across dry wood. The overseers shouted and whipped harder. But even pain could not silence the whispers. By morning, the story had reached the slave barracks, the medical camps, even the secret tunnels where rebels once hid long ago. It changed each time it was told. Some said the human had killed a dozen guards. Others claimed he had wings of fire that carried him above the rooftops. A few even swore that the girl he saved was not ordinary, that she was the lost daughter of an ancient royal bloodline. None of it mattered. What mattered was the heart of the story. A human had said no. A human had called a slave free. The little girl, wrapped in her blanket, woke inside the human's hidden base. She stretched slowly, her body still sore, but her heart lighter than it had ever been. She turned and saw him sitting in the corner, still awake, blade resting on his lap. His eyes were red with fatigue, but his back was straight like a sentinel guarding her sleep. "You didn't rest," she whispered. He shook his head. "Not yet. Too dangerous." The girl hugged the blanket closer. Do you think they know by now?" The human gave a bitter smile. "They know. The guild will never stay quiet about this. By now every slaver, every hunter, every mercenary in this city has heard." She lowered her gaze, guilt heavy in her chest. "Then I've made things worse for you." "No," he said firmly, standing and walking to her side. "You don't understand. This isn't just about you anymore. What I did, it lit something in the dark. I saw it in their eyes before we escaped." The girl frowned slightly. "Whose eyes?" "The others. The ones in cages. The ones who've forgotten what freedom looks like. They saw me call you free." He paused, his voice quiet but sharp. "And now they'll never forget." Outside, far away in the filthy corners of the city, the whispers kept spreading. Some slaves prayed it was true. Some refused to believe. Hope was too painful after years of betrayal. Yet even the most broken hearts could not stop wondering. If one girl could be saved, why not two? If one chain could be broken, why not all? That night, in a crowded mine camp, an old alien bent close to a younger one and whispered, "They say the human is not just saving one. They say he will come for us all." The younger alien closed his eyes, clutching the words like a treasure. Meanwhile, in the highest tower of the Slaver Guild, the masters gathered, their faces twisted with fury. "This cannot continue," one snarled. "He is only one human," another scoffed. "We will crush him." But deep down they feared something worse than his blade. They feared his defiance. A single act of rebellion was dangerous. A single whisper could grow into a storm. Back in the safe house, the girl leaned against the cot. "They'll never stop hunting us, will they?" The human looked at her with steady eyes. "No, they won't." He reached down, adjusting the bandage on her wrist carefully. "But that's not what scares them the most." She tilted her head. "Then what does?" His gaze hardened, his voice low. "The idea that one day no one will fear them at all." The girl's eyes widened, her breath catching. Slowly she whispered, almost to herself, "Hundreds will hear. Thousands, maybe." The human stood, walking toward the dim light at the door. "It's already begun. The whispers are louder than any chains." The night was heavy with silence. Deep in the safe house, the human sat near the door, his blade resting across his knees, his eyes half closed but alert. The girl slept lightly on the cot, her small form wrapped in the blanket he had given her. Outside, the city breathed with neon lights and the distant hum of ships, but down here in the tunnels only shadows lived, or so he thought. It began with a sound, soft, almost too faint to notice. A shuffle of footsteps. At first the human assumed it was a patrol, another squad of bounty hunters searching the tunnels. His hand tightened on the blade. He was ready, but then came another sound. And another. Not heavy boots, not armored strides. These were lighter, hesitant, almost desperate. The girl stirred awake. Her silver eyes blinked open. "What is it?" she whispered. The human raised a finger for silence. He stood slowly, moving toward the door. The noises grew clearer now. Whispers, the clinking of chains, the soft whimper of tired voices. He frowned, pressed his ear to the metal, and then a knock. Not the hard bang of soldiers, but a trembling tap, like someone too afraid to ask for entry. The human opened the door a fraction, blade ready. What he saw made him freeze. Outside stood 5 figures. Their clothes were torn, their bodies bruised, their wrists still marked with fresh scars from broken shackles. Their faces were hollow with hunger, yet their eyes burned with something else. Hope. One of them, an older alien with cracked skin, fell to his knees. His voice shook. You are the human, aren't you? The one who freed the girl? The human glanced at the child beside him. She stared in shock, clutching the blanket tighter. The old alien's eyes filled with tears. Please, save us too. Before the human could respond, more shadows moved in the tunnel. Another group appeared, 10 this time. Then 20. The corridor filled with the sound of footsteps, whispers, the rattle of broken chains. The girl gasped. She pressed herself against the human's side, whispering, They came, just like I said they would. Within minutes, the narrow passage was overflowing. Dozens of escaped slaves, their faces dirty but their eyes shining, crowded outside his door. Some leaned on each other for strength. Some carried children in their arms, but all of them looked at him the same way, like he was their last hope. The human stepped outside, scanning the sea of faces. You shouldn't be here, he said firmly. The guild will track you. They'll kill you for escaping. But his words didn't push them away. Instead, a young mother stepped forward, clutching her thin child. Her voice cracked as she spoke. They already kill us every day. Better to die here. With you, the crowd murmured in agreement. A weak-old slave whispered loudly enough for all to hear. You are our father now. You saved one of us, and now hundreds call you the same. The human's jaw tightened. He wanted to protest, to tell them he was no savior, just a soldier who had made a single choice. But looking at their faces, scarred, broken, yet filled with new light, he couldn't. The girl tugged his sleeve, her voice trembling. They need you. Like I did. You can't send them away. He looked down at her, then back at the crowd. Hundreds of eyes shining in the darkness, waiting. For orders, for protection, for freedom. The human lowered his blade, exhaling slowly. Do you understand what this means? His voice carried over the crowd. The guild won't stop now. They will send armies. They will burn every street to hunt you. Staying here means war. There was silence. Then a voice from the back. Then let it be war. Another voice rose. We have lived in chains too long. The whispers turned into chants, faint at first, then louder. No chains, no chains. No chains! The human felt the weight of the moment pressing on his shoulders. He had not asked for this. He had not wanted to be anyone's leader. But the choice was no longer his. Hundreds had already made it for him. The girl stepped in front of him, her eyes glowing in the dim light. You saved me. Now save them too, his chest tightened. For a long time he said nothing. Then slowly he raised his blade high, its steel catching the faint glow of the lamps. His voice thundered through the tunnels. Then tonight, you are no longer slaves. Tonight you fight as free people. The crowd erupted, not with fear, but with cheers. For the first time in years, their voices carried hope instead of despair. They had no weapons, no armor, but they had something greater. Someone who had shown them freedom could be real. The human looked at them, his heart heavy but steady. He knew the path ahead would be filled with blood. But he also knew one truth. Chains could not silence whispers forever. And now the whispers had become a roar. The tunnel shook with the voices of the freed slaves. Their chant, no chains, no chains, echoed off the stone walls louder and stronger with every passing moment. The human stood at the center, blade still raised, watching the fire ignite in their eyes. For years these people had lived bent and broken. Now for the first time they stood tall. The girl pressed close to him, her silver eyes shining with tears. They believe in you, she whispered. They finally believe. The human lowered his blade slowly, scanning the hundreds of faces before him. Men, women, children, young and old, beaten, scarred, hungry. They had no weapons, no armor, and yet their spirits burned brighter than any soldier's. I didn't ask for this, he said quietly, almost to himself. I only wanted to save one life. But the crowd heard him, and a voice rose from the front. One life is enough to start 1,000 more. Another voice shouted, You are our father now. Lead us, the chant grew again. Father! 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 The human clenched his jaw, struggling with the weight of it. He was a soldier, not a leader. But as he looked into their eyes, he realized he no longer had a choice. The slavers would never forgive what had happened. If these people returned to their cages, they would be killed slowly to make an example. The only path left was forward. He took a deep breath, stepping onto a raised stone. The crowd quieted immediately, their attention locked on him. You all know what the guild will do, he began, his voice carrying through the tunnels. They will send hunters, soldiers, assassins. They will burn every corner of this city to drag you back. If you stay, there is no turning back. You will be hunted until the end." A ripple of fear passed through the crowd, but no one moved. The human's eyes hardened. "But hear me well. Tonight you are no longer slaves. Tonight you are people of your own will. If you fight not for me, but for each other. For your children. For a future where no child wears chains again." The silence broke into cheers, loud and fierce. The girl gripped his hand, her voice steady despite the tremor in her body. "Then say it. Say you'll lead us." His eyes softened as he looked down at her. In her small face he saw more than fear. He saw trust, and that trust lit something deep inside him, something he thought long buried. He raised his blade high again, the steel catching the glow of the lamps. "Then I will lead you," he declared. "Not as a master, not as a king, but as the father of the forgotten. Together we will show them we are not chains to be owned. We are voices that cannot be silenced." The tunnels erupted in thunder. The freed shouted, wept, embraced one another. For the first time in memory, they felt like more than survivors, they felt alive. The human turned to the girl who was smiling through her tears. "We'll need shelter, weapons, allies," he muttered. She nodded quickly. "They'll follow you anywhere." He looked at the crowd again. Already they were organizing themselves, helping the weak, supporting the children. What once were prisoners now stood as a people reborn. Far above, in the towers of the guild, alarms screamed louder than before. The masters watched from their glass walls, their faces pale with rage. "This is no longer one human," one hissed. Another clenched his claws. "It is an army." He has made them believe their fear was not of weapons, it was of hope. They knew what hope could do. It could topple empires. Back in the tunnels, the human gave his final command of the night. "Rest now. Tomorrow we prepare. The war for freedom begins at dawn." The crowd cheered once more, but this time it was not chaos, it was unity. They began to settle, finding places to sleep, sharing scraps of food, whispering promises of a new day. The human finally lowered his blade, exhaustion pressing heavy on his shoulders. He sat against the wall, closing his eyes for a moment. The girl curled up beside him, her head resting against his arm. "Father of the forgotten," she whispered softly, almost like a blessing. He looked down at her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "No," he said quietly, "just a man who refused to look away." But deep inside he knew the truth. Whether he wanted it or not, he had become something more. And as the dawn crept closer, the slavers above tightened their grip on power, unaware that the first spark of rebellion had already been lit in the shadows below, one that would soon burn through the entire galaxy.